What about when you're with a partner who has experience mismatch? So someone has a lot of partners or has had a lot of partners and the other one doesn't. And for whatever reason, one partner feels some way and the other one feels the other way. And that really affects their sexual relationship.
Yeah, I see this a lot. And it's interesting because there are a lot of folks who will either, on one end, prioritize having a lot of partners and see that as a really positive thing. Then there are some folks who see that as a negative thing. And same with people who don't have a lot of partners. There are some people who think that's really important and other people who will see that as something that is working against them, right, in their dynamics. So one, I think it's so important to, again, remember subjectivity and what is the meaning that you're both placing on this history that you have or don't have, right? And I just think it's super, super important to remind everyone to remember that you are creating new experiences every time you are sexual with a person. So whether you've had 30 partners or 100 partners or 2 partners, what you're doing with that partner in the moment is new in that experience for you both. So try to see it as something that maybe builds on knowledge that you have from other sexual experiences or that your partner does, but it's something that you are like living here and now in the moment. And can you stay in the present tense with each sexual experience that you have and communicate when you're afraid or when you're nervous about something, or if you don't know how to do something and your partner does, and talk about the meaning that you're making about whether or not your partner does or does not have this experience and how it's shaping your fears about pleasure or your fears about how your partner is going to appraise you or how you might be appraising them.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about communication. It's hard to talk about sex. We don't learn how to talk about sex. So how do you talk about sex?
Well, I think you just start, right? And it gets uncomfortable and messy and awkward. And then you keep going and it gets easier and easier. I don't know about you, but when I first got into this field, I was a lot less comfortable talking about sex. And now that I do it all the time, there's really nothing I can't talk about, right?
Yeah.
But not everyone is in this work. And so it can be really scary to feel like you're going to touch on something that's going to hurt your partner's feelings or maybe blow up a pocket in your relationship or say something that might shift the way you see yourself or the way you believe people will see you. So it can be really scary. But once you just start doing it, you realize that it is a little bit easier than maybe you thought.
Yeah. And it gets easier every time. As you mentioned, I think people think I'm just going to have this one talk and it's going to fix everything. And it's not, right? And just realize like no one taught us how to talk about sex. Like we didn't learn that in school and you don't know how to, your partner doesn't know how to. So you're navigating new treacherous waters and you're sort of like, there may be times where one person shuts down and you just got to stop and come back another day, you know?
Totally.
Are there times when you feel like there's no coming back? Like the communication is so poor, people are too shut down or too maybe have prior traumas or other things that are making it very difficult for people to progress.
Well, in the therapy, I would say that's up to them, right? If they decide it's too much, they can stop at any point in time. And I would hope that they would also have the kind of relationship with their therapist where they might be able to say, hey, I need to pump the brakes a little. This is slow. Therapists want to know that. If you're feeling flooded and you can't or don't want to move into an area of exploration, it's good to tell your therapist that. I think the same is true with partners. And if you have a healthy dynamic together, or a dynamic that is healthy enough, right? I don't like to use this like binary language of healthy or unhealthy, but healthy enough where you can say to one another, like, I need to take a break from this topic for a week, a month, 6 months, right? Can you just honor that with each other? And you might decide, I can't. It's really important to me. I need to move forward. But that's a relationship impasse that definitely warrants exploration. But if the relationship is super important to you, you don't have many choices other than to honor where each other are coming from and what your needs and boundaries are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard. It's really hard. But I think just talking to your partner, if you were the one receiving that information and saying, look, this is really important to me, I will wait for you. But if you feel like we could talk sooner, that would mean a lot to me. Sort of responding in a way that respects them, but also notes like, this is really important to me. And I like because I love this relationship, or I love us together, I'm willing to wait for you, and not like making them feel guilty about it, but sort of saying like, I'm doing this because I love you, but I would really appreciate if you could think of me. And as you start, if you start feeling more comfortable sooner, I'd love to talk about it sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also important if you're the person getting that brake sort of pumped in your direction to say, what do you need from me in this time? Is it helpful if I don't talk about this, or this? Is it helpful if we see a therapist together? Is it helpful to have other kinds of support, right? And really like lean into the process in a way that feels good for the person who does need more time or more space.
So let's talk about cheating.
Ooh.
Why do people cheat? I'm sure you've seen many people who've been on the receiving end or the giving end of cheating. In your experience, why do people do it?
Well, there's a couple of reasons people cheat. Sometimes they are looking for something. They're looking for a connection to a part of themselves that they can't seem to access anymore in their current relationship. Or they're looking to feel something new that maybe they can't experience with their partner because their partner either isn't willing or isn't able to join them in that exploration. Sometimes people do it from a place of resentment. They do it from a place of entitlement or trying to kind of find a reclamation of power or worthiness if they're feeling one down a lot in their partnership. Sometimes people do it because their partner isn't willing to join them in trying a new kink or a new kind of experience, and they want that experience really, really badly. Sometimes it's a place of insecurity, and I think there probably are numerous other reasons too, but those are the main ones that I hear.
Do you think people, when they cheat, it's just like, it just happened in the moment? Like that's what you hear sometimes, right? Like it was just a one-time thing. It didn't mean anything. Do you think that there's a possibility to truth to that?
Well, I think what could be true about that is that maybe it doesn't mean anything about how much they care about their partner, right? Especially if something like alcohol or other substances are involved that alter someone's decision-making or their impulse control. But I think it's really important to recognize that if you're in that place where you're sort of unhappy and you're thinking about it, if you have a moment or a lapse, it's going to be that much easier for you to justify like an oops, right? But typically cheating requires a lot of planning. It requires deception of some kind or the obfuscation of facts or truths. And if it's happening on an ongoing basis, I don't think you can justify an oops, it just happened.
Yeah. Are there differences between men who cheat and women who cheat? The reason I ask is because when you look at biology, during a sexual encounter, there is some data that women have more bonding tendencies with the hormones they release. They tend to bond with the person they had intercourse with. And people can obviously turn that off, so to speak. They can try to psychologically push that away. But there is sort of that emotional bond that sometimes tries to occur, whereas maybe not so much in men, although I think there's still some of that in men. So do you see differences in the reasons between men and women?
I feel a little bit differently about that story, about the biology. Pair bonding is something that people of all biological sex and gender can experience because of oxytocin, vasopressin, as you know, right? And certainly people born in female bodies do have more available to them, but there's so much socialization and context that goes along with the story of being socialized as a woman that create for women a quicker path from that physiological response to the story about what it means. And I think men are socialized in very different ways. So they have a similar physiological response, but they are conditioned to stifle that differently, whereas women are conditioned to experience it and make meaning around it a lot. So,
True. I mean, there are differences in the brain. So when you look at like when the brain lights up during orgasm and how quickly that comes down, we see that all the sort of the dopamine and all the positive sort of hormones last a little bit longer in women than they do in men. So there is a little bit of true variation, in addition to, of course, the socialization that plays a role.
Yeah. There's no doubt that there's differences in the biology in some ways, but I think that they are really amplified, and there's so much more meaning attached based on how we're socialized.
Yeah.
And because of how we're socialized, I think that can play a role in the different reasons that people might cheat. But at our core, I mean, a lot of women cheat for the same reasons that men cheat. They want to feel something. They want to feel desired. They are tired of partnering with someone who feels like a dependent. So they want to experience a different kind of interaction. A lot of men feel like if they're sole providers, they feel like, wow, I'm doing a lot for the family and I just need an escape or a release. But we have to remember that culturally, we also have this expectation around like sex. So a lot of men want to be sexual as a way to demonstrate their masculinity. Not all men, of course, but for a lot of men, this is a really important unconscious motivation. And so when they are thinking about being sexual, sometimes it's not about, I want to be in relationship with these other people, but it's more about, I want to feel like a man, and doing this makes me feel that way. Now, that's not a justification, but understanding that can help to understand how there is sometimes like an identity component that factors into the motivations for cheating. Now, women have that too, but I think it's a little bit different. They want to be doted on. They want to be cared for. They want somebody to show up with some energy that feels like they are being the focus, or they are being focused on, right? I think that, there's some crossover, but sometimes those are the ways that it can be different.
Yeah. It's really sad that we get to those points where in your relationship, you either don't feel like a man because you're not valued sexually, I guess, or as a woman, you don't feel desired and the center of someone's attention. You mentioned in one of your podcasts that you were on that like boredom is one of the big causes of low desire that you think people don't realize.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Emily Nagoski just covered this in her book, Come Together. If the sex that you're having is not sex that you're really excited about, the desire that you feel to be sexual isn't going to be there, because why do you want to have sex that isn't great sex? But mediocre sex can be great too. But I mean, more often than not, if you are feeling sort of bored in your life, bored in your relationship, understimulated sexually, it's going to take a toll on your overall vitality and your overall energy around being creative and being vibrant and leaning into those sort of physical sensations of pleasure.